This man is a thief, but he is no ordinary thief. He is Azu, king of Idala kingdom, loved and respected by the people. But at night, he is a notorious thief, wanted by the people in his kingdom to pay for all his crimes. But for us to really understand how the trouble of this young king started, we must start this story from the very beginning. You see, many years ago, even before Azu was born, there lived a powerful ruler, King Agba, ruler of the Idala kingdom. He was a very fierce warrior, but compassionate towards his people. He won several wars for the kingdom, and throughout his reign, there was peace in the land, because the neighboring kingdom were afraid to wage war against him. There was a time 5 kingdoms came together in alliance to bring Idala kingdom down. But early in the morning, while the warriors were still asleep in their camp, King Agba courageously led his troop into the enemy's camp and unalived many of them. The few survivors escaped to tell the story to their people. The rumor soon spread throughout the land and the neighboring kingdom that the king had a very powerful deity in his room that protected him during the battle and gave him direct instruction on what to do. How true these rumors were, no one knows. Above all, every year the king would take a large chunk of the wealth of the rich men and distribute it to the poor. This made the people very happy, but the upper class population in the kingdom were very angry about this act from the king. But afraid of his wrath, they kept their grudges to themselves. But even though he was loved and respected by the people, he was an unhappy man. His beautiful queen gave birth to 3 daughters for him, but no sons. And this was going to pose a big problem. According to the custom of the land, the king must give birth to a prince that will take his place when he is gone to the world beyond. Since he had no son, the kingship must move from his lineage and goes to the Olowu, a man of great stature, greatest of all the chiefs. This made the king very unhappy. Even though he loved his wife, he was left with no other option other than to marry a second wife that will bear him male children. Immediately, he made a decree that he was taking a second wife.
I, King Agba, ruler of Idala kingdom, order all the beautiful maidens in this kingdom to appear before me in 7 days' time in a dance competition, so I can choose a wife. Failure to do as I have commanded will result in grave consequences. I have spoken, and my word is law.
He decreed. The town crier immediately spread this information throughout the kingdom. When this news got to the people, they jumped up in jubilation. The mothers prepared their daughters for the big day. They went to the market to buy expensive fabric to make their daughters stand out among their peers. When the news of the king's decision to take a second wife got to the queen, she was very sad. She just could not bear to share her husband with another woman. Well, even though she was unhappy, she knew this was a crucial decision her husband must make to keep the kingship in his lineage. Meanwhile, the people were preparing massively for the great day. The parents paid professional dancers from neighboring kingdoms to teach their daughters how to dance properly, so they can be the winner of the competition and ultimately become the new queen, not knowing they will be met with a rude shock. The day for the dance competition soon reached, and the kingdom gathered to watch all the beautiful ladies perform before the king at the palace. They were all dressed in very fine and bright attires, and they performed before the king in groups, dancing beautifully to the sound of the drum and swaying their waists to the rhythm of the music, much to the joy and applause from the happy crowd. But despite the fact that hundreds of beautiful maidens appeared before him, surprisingly, the king was not just interested in any of them. He was bored and felt disturbed. He felt he was just wasting his time, and he decided to end this competition. abruptly and retreat back into his chambers. But just when he was about to pass this information, that was when he saw her, a lady with an extraordinary beauty. Even though she was dressed in a simple attire, her inner beauty shone brighter than the sun. But then she was not among the maidens. She was standing with the crowd, watching the competition and sharing the maidens on. The king was surprised, wondering why such a beautiful maiden was not in the competition. He fell instantly in love with her. Out of curiosity, he sent one of his messengers to make inquiry about this beautiful lady that had captured his heart. The messenger soon returned with the news that broke his heart. The lady he was interested in was Ada, but she was not a single lady. She was newly married to Obi, a hunter of great skills and reputation. Hence, she was not dancing with the maidens. This news made the king very angry and sad. He called off the competition and retreated into his inner chambers in great anger. The people were confused. They just can't understand why the king was angry and refused to select any of the beautiful maidens competing in the dance competition. The people returned back to their various homes with sadness in their hearts, especially the ladies. Most of them cried, their hopes dashed to the ground. But back at his chambers, the king was struggling with a new kind of emotion, a feeling of love mixed with anger and pain. He just could not get his mind off Ada, even though she was someone else's wife. And soon the queen noticed the change in her husband's mood. So she called him one evening. "My lord, what is the matter with you? Since all these days, after the maidens dance competition, you have not been yourself. You don't eat or even sleep well at night. If you don't see any lady you love in this kingdom, you can go to the neighboring kingdoms in search of a wife. I know you are doing this for the greater good of this royal family," she told him. Well, the king brushed off all her concerns.
Don't bother yourself. It is not easy leading all these people, and the stress is telling on me a bit. So don't worry, I'm very okay.
He lied to her. With this reassurance, the queen's mind was at rest, not knowing great trouble was about to befall them. For days on end, King Igaba was unhappy. He wanted Ada for himself so badly. Even though she was married, he was ready to do anything to get her. Even though he knew fully well this was against the custom and tradition of the land, he was not changing his mind, so he planned within himself on the best way to get her without the people suspecting him of any foul play. He thought for days until a cunning idea crossed his mind. Smiling to himself, he started putting his plans into motion, where he was about to be consumed by his own actions. On this fateful evening, he sent for Obi, the husband of Ada, to appear before him. In his inner courtroom, Obi was greatly afraid, wondering what offense he had committed to receive a direct summon from the king. He was fidgeting as he appeared before the king. Alone in the courtroom with him, King Igaba wasted no time in telling him the reason for the summon.
Obi, I've heard so much about you. The people sing praises of your great hunting skills, and even my captain have testified of your combat skills on the battlefield. But I need you to do me a favor, and I will be glad if you can agree to my request.
He said, looking at him sternly. Obi looked downwards, avoiding his gaze, and wondering within his heart what he owns that the king wanted. He was poor, not a man of great wealth. As if reading his thoughts, the king continued.
I don't need your land, goats, and cattle. I have those in great abundance. I need your wife. Allow me to marry her, and I will give you wealth of great abundance, that you will not need to worry about money for the rest of your life.
He continued. Obi shuddered in great fear. He just could not believe his ears. He was short of words. The king brought out a bag of gold and presented it before him.
Take this gold and run away to a distant land, but you must leave Ada behind. Don't ever come back to these lands. Start your life afresh there. Remarry and enjoy your riches.
He told him. Obi, though tempted by the promises of great wealth, fell to his knees before the king with tears in his eyes.
Please, my king, have mercy on me. Take your gold back. I can't live without Ada. There are a lot of maidens in this land that are way more beautiful than her. Please, you can marry as many of them as possible. But please, don't separate me from the love of my life.
He pleaded with the king. By this time, he was crying profusely. King Igaba seemed to be touched by the tears of Obi and gave him a surprising response.
It is okay, my son. I have changed my mind. You can leave my presence.
Obi looked up in shock and surprise. He thanked the king and left the palace. But Obi was not a child. He can smell doom in the air. He knew King Igaba very well. He was not someone to take no for an answer. He knew he must leave this kingdom as soon as possible if he wanted to stay alive. Hey, before we jump right back into our story, today's warm up goes to Charlene watching from New York City and Tino watching from Zimbabwe. Thank you so much for the love and support. Please, where are you watching from? Type it in the comment section so I can know you better and send you a hug in our next episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Anita Chocolate. Alright, back to our story. King Igaba, though he pretended to let Obi go, was furious and very upset. He summoned 5 of his most trusted soldiers that same night, mighty men of valor, skilled in the art of combat, and gave them specific instruction. They understood the mission well and immediately swung into action. It was already late before Obi got back home from the palace. The moment he got home, he ordered Ada to pack up few of their belongings so they can escape the kingdom that night. Ada was frightened and stood still, confused, wondering what the matter could be. She asked him what the matter was. Obi quickly narrated what happened between him and the king at the palace, while hurriedly scavenging through his belongings, packing the few things he could lay his hands on, and urged Ada to do the same so they can move out as soon as possible as they were in great danger. While they were still in the house, arguing back and forth and gathering their belongings in total confusion, that was when Obi saw them. Spying through the window, he saw the soldiers right in front of his compound. He knew this meant only one thing. His time was up. He suspected the king would send assassins after him, but he never knew it would be this quick. Immediately, he gave Ada the little bunch of their important belongings and told her to leave through the back door. But Ada was crying. She was not leaving her husband. She was ready to die with him. Obi pleaded with her earnestly.
Please, my love, you need to go now. There is no need staying behind. Run straight to the river bank. There's a canoe already there waiting for us. Board the boat and escape to the other side. I will meet you later. There's no time. Come on, go.
He urged her on in a whisper. Ada was crying profusely. Even though she don't want to leave Obi, she had no other option but to go. She hugged him tightly. She reluctantly took the bag and ran into the darkness. Obi took his sword and came out from his hut to meet the king's messengers of death. He was ready for whatever fate had in store for him. Even though he was a skilled swordman, he knew it was almost impossible for him to defeat these men. He had seen them fight the king's enemy at war, and there is little wonder King Igaba chose them as his right-hand men. A fierce fight soon emerged between them. He fought them with all his might. Even though he knew he was not a match for any of these men, he wanted to buy Ada enough time to escape from the kingdom. The fight continued. Even though he was getting very weak, he stood his ground until one decisive blow from one of them broke his sword in half, and a kick to his rib sent him off balance, and he was captured. They burst into his hut, only to be greeted with an empty house. Ada was nowhere to be found. Immediately, their leader sent two of his men after her. While they were hunting for her, the remaining three took him back into his house, tied him down, and set the house ablaze with him inside. They wanted the whole incident to look like an accident. The villagers soon noticed that Obi's house was ablaze. But before the villagers could rush to his aid, the hut was almost razed to the ground. It was too late. He was no more. This horrible incident also acted as a diversion, because while the villagers were all gathered around Obi's compound, speculating about this accident, all five of the assassins intensified their search for Ada, and soon enough they tracked her down to the riverside and captured her. The boatman, seeing what was happening, quietly paddled his canoe away into the darkness, undetected. Ada was panicking. She was greatly frightened as these fierce warriors held onto her and gently led her away to their hideout. There at their hideout, Ada was in a great shock at who she saw there. Seated on an elevated platform was King Igaba, the supreme leader of the kingdom. She was confused and in shock. She quickly bowed her head and avoided his gaze. The king, sensing attention, calmed her down in a calm voice.
My dear Ada, don't be afraid. I'm not here to harm you, but to make your life much better.
He told her. Ada was silent, wondering what was really happening.
The moment I laid my eyes on you at the maidens dance competition, I fell head over heels in love with you. Right now, your husband is no more. You must return back home. But don't tell anyone what you saw tonight. Go, mourn your husband, as tradition demands. But after this period of mourning, I will make you my new queen.
He told her. Ada cried at the news of her husband's death. She wondered what she did wrong that caused fate to deal her such a cruel hand. She left the king's presence with a heavy heart. When she arrived back at their compound, she was greeted with a sight that turned her heart into 1,000 pieces. The people consoled her. They would have been wondering about her whereabouts. She told them that she was at her sister's place and was just hearing the news. They were very sorry for her. Everyone's heart was broken because Obi was very kind to the villagers, even though he was not a man of great means. He sacrificed a lot for the happiness of the people. Whenever his tribe caught a very big animal, he will usually distribute its meat among the aged and poor who could not afford to buy meat for their meals. This act of kindness from him made the villagers sing his praises. But now that he is gone, he has left a vacuum that none could fill. The following morning, the king with some of his chiefs came to Obi's compound to pay condolence visits to the family of the deceased. The people were glad to see their king showing human sympathy despite his power, wealth, and influence. They came out to greet him and explain the incident to the king, while he shook his head with sadness on his face. This made the villager love him even more. They never knew he was the mastermind behind this disaster. Only Ada was aware of the whole truth, but she kept her part of the story to herself, knowing fully well that exposing the king before the villager would only expose her to grave dangers. The king addressed the villagers.
My people, it is quite unfortunate that this incident happened in your village. Nevertheless, you must be more careful and vigilant to check on each other henceforth to avoid what happened last night. Meanwhile, on my part, I will set up vigilante groups in the villages at night to ensure safety of lives and property.
He told them. These words from the king warmed the heart of the people, and they hailed him, "Long live the king!" Well, the king continued.
As for the wife of the deceased, we will take her back with us to the palace so I can make sure she receives proper care and well provided for during these her trying times.
He told them, and they left with her back to the palace. The people could not see through their king's lies. They saw him as a compassionate man, and they sang his praises in all the villages. When Nemesis will soon catch up with him, this great evil he had committed was against the custom of the land, and the deities were very angry. And soon great trouble will befall the king and his entire kingdom. According to the tradition of the land, a widow must mourn her late husband for a period of 6 full moons, after which she can remarry if she wish. But during this time, she must remain at home and wear only black attires. Ada spent this time in the palace under the watchful eyes of the king. During her mourning period, King Igaba made sure Ada never lacked anything. He provided all her needs and assigned 2 maidens to attend to her daily. But Ada was very sad. She cried bitterly most nights. She just can't get over the loss of her husband, and thought of running away always crossed her mind, but she was paralyzed by fear and felt helpless. Besides, the palace was heavily guarded, always with warriors armed to the tooth. Leaving the palace without the permission of the king was almost impossible. While Ada was struggling with these feelings of sadness, fear, and helplessness, King Igaba was also battling with a new kind of emotion, a dark desire that will make even the darkest soul resentful. King Igaba was having a burning desire to serve it out to Ada, even though he knew she was still on her mourning period, and it was greatly forbidden for a man to have his way with a widow still mourning her husband. He just could not control himself, even though Ada was always covered in black clothing from her hair to her toe. He just could not help but fantasize about how she would taste on bed. He struggled with this dark desire for days until consumed by lust and throwing all caution to the wind, he decided to do the unthinkable. That night, under the cover of darkness, he quietly sneaked into Ada's room, and there he was greeted with a sight that wowed him. Even though Ada was sleeping, she was wearing minimal clothing, and her exposed skin was smooth as silk. His jaw dropped. Whatever semblance of conscience left in him quickly evaporated into thin air, and he was determined to have a taste of her no matter what. Ada woke up to notice the king's presence in her room. She was not a child. She knew this meant only one thing: the king needs her. She wanted to shout for help, but obviously that would bring her great trouble. Helpless and with tears flowing down her eyes, he served it out to her that night. As bad as what he did was, King Igaba, unperturbed, felt he was untouchable. In fact, he turned this to his daily routine. Every night when everyone was fast asleep, he would sneak from his chamber and go into Ada's room. There he would serve it out to her. The king was very happy, not knowing great punishment was awaiting him. Ada was very unhappy because of what the king was doing to her. She made up her mind to escape from the palace and leave the kingdom no matter the consequences, not knowing fate had other plans in store for her. Every day she would sit in the courtyard, watching the movement of the guards and timing them. She was searching for loopholes in the security of the palace. But while she was perfecting her escape plan, she made a discovery that sent shiver down her spine. She was pregnant for King Igaba. She was devastated. According to the rules in the kingdom, if a widow was found pregnant when her mourning was not yet over, she must be stoned to death. She was confused and felt helpless. But when Ada broke the news of her pregnancy to the king, he was filled with great joy and waived off all her concern.
Ada, my heart, don't be afraid. No harm can come to you. I am the law. Before anyone can touch you, they must first pass through me. Don't worry, I will make you my queen after this period.
He reassured her. Even though she was unhappy, she accepted her fate, and soon her mourning period was over, and the necessary traditional rites were performed by the chief priest, and she was free to remarry. King Igaba breathed a sign of relief. Immediately, he made a proclamation throughout the land that he was remarrying a new queen. The news brought great joy to the people, but when they discovered he was getting married to Ada, they just could not help but murmur among themselves. Is it not the lady that just finished mourning her husband in the palace? Why is the king remarrying her all of a sudden? Something is not right, they thought among themselves. But even though they suspected something was fishy, they kept their thoughts to themselves. They were afraid of the king's anger. King Iraba's marriage to Ada was one of a kind. Great dignity from far and near were all present. The ceremony lasted for 7 days, amid so much food and drink and the beating of the drums. 100 cows were slaughtered. The great display of wealth during the marriage ceremony have not been matched to date. Few months after the marriage, Ada gave birth to a bouncing baby boy. Much to the joy and jubilation in the palace and throughout the kingdom, even though now it was very clear to the people that Ada had been pregnant during her mourning period, none was brave enough to confront the king for fear of grave consequences. King Igaba was filled with great joy. He felt fulfilled. Now he had a son to succeed him when he moved on to the world beyond. On the 7th day, he named him Azu, not knowing it would be the reason for his tears. Azu, the young prince, grew up like every normal child, loved and respected by the people. King Igaba and Queen Ada took special care of the young prince. They satisfied every of his whim. But despite this great love and care from everyone, King Igaba could not help but notice something really strange about his young prince. Azu was never satisfied with what was given to him. He will forcefully seize what belongs to the other kids in the palace. Even though this mischievous act from the young prince make the other children cry, their parents dare not to scold Azu because of fear of facing their consequences. Even though King Igaba and Ada started noticing this strange character from Azu, they waved them off as childish mischief and spoilt him even more. They made sure he enjoyed whatever money could afford, not knowing great trouble was just around the corner. As Azu grew into adolescence, his love for mischief also grew for the worse. He was very stubborn and unruly. He also started keeping bad companies outside the palace gates. He would spend most of his days roaming outside aimlessly with his gang. Whenever they passed through somewhere, something valuable must go missing from that place. Even though Azu had no need for these stolen goods, he just had a strong feeling of fulfillment whenever he stole something, a character not fit for royalty. Soon rumors of Azu's bad behavior started spreading around the kingdom. The people could not help but wonder to themselves why a prince was behaving in this way. And soon, words got to the king of his son's waywardness. He was bitter and very unhappy. He could sense disaster in the air, and in desperate bid to nip this evil in the bud, King Igaba called Azu to appear before him that evening.
My son, what is this I'm hearing about you? Why are you roaming the kingdom cause it trouble. Is there anything you need we have not provided for you? Why do you want to bring I and your mother disgrace?
He queried him. Azu could not answer. He looked away, avoiding the king's fiery eyes.
Listen and listen good. If you continue in this path, the people will not accept you as the next king after me. Because according to the tradition of these lands, a thief cannot ascend the throne of Idala kingdom. Therefore, you will no longer leave this palace until you prove beyond all reasonable doubt that you are a changed young man.
He told him. The prince bowed and left his presence. King Igaba immediately ordered his guards not to let Azu out of the palace without his permission. Even though Azu showed remorse in the presence of his father, yet he was resentful towards him. He wondered what he had done wrong to deserve this punishment from his father. And soon, as the days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months, the errant spirit of the young prince could not stay within the palace wall. He wanted to be out there on the streets with his gang, stealing and causing havoc. He was very unhappy, but in the midst of this anger and pent-up frustration, that was when a dark idea crossed his mind. How about he unalive his own father and become the next king? He will have all the authority and liberty to do whatever pleases him, and no one will stop him. He smiled to himself. He just could not believe he had not thought of this idea all this while. But there was a problem. King Igaba was a very strong man, toughened by the many years of war, and he was not someone that could be taken down easily with the flick of a finger. He knew this would take careful planning, as any mistake could have deadly consequences. And should he succeed, no finger must point back to him, otherwise he is done for. So here bring this first chapter of this episode to a close. What do you think will happen in the part 2 of this story? Will Azu succeed in his assassination attempt? What will be his fate and that of the kingdom? Watch out in the next episode. If you have watched up to this point, I believe you are already subscribed to this channel. If not, please smash the subscription button below so you can follow Anita Chocolate and not miss any of our future videos. Also turn on the notification bell, like this video and share with your loved ones. Also type in where you are watching from so I can know you better and send you a special greeting in the next episode. While waiting for our next upload, please watch these other stories from this channel. Bye.